You brought up AI assistant. Maybe you could describe the difference between a Gen AI assistant and agentic AI, which I think people often use interchangeably, but they're different. And then why did you choose one over the other at Compark?
Yeah, so we really have to make the distinction between assistive AI and agentic AI. And let's say assistive AI is best described as AI that is designed to help the user, but it keeps the user in the loop at all times, right? So assistive AI is a little bit like, the Tesla autopilot, maybe. It gives you a boost in productivity when used correctly, but it still requires oversight and it requires the human to be in the loop at all times. Agentic AI is AI that can take action. So that it can work in an autonomous way, that can orchestrate itself, and that can orchestrate the workflows, right? And that, of course, has a much greater potential to disrupt the industry because it will allow you to keep the human out of the loop, or in reality, bring a human in the loop only when it's absolutely necessary. And you can imagine that the potential for, productivity gains, shorter cycle times, significant cost reductions, and so on, is much greater with agentic AI than with assistive AI. And for us, it's actually an evolutionary process. We started with assistive AI because that was let's say, the technology that was available to us in the early stages 2 years ago. So we started rolling out assistive technology. The first assistive technology that we launched was basically a chatbot that would allow you to essentially consult the documentation of our product, right? So you could just ask the chatbot how to accomplish certain things in our UI. And from there, the next step was to introduce the template generation, template migration, the PDF UA tagging, and so on and so forth. So still assistive, but with the potential to make you as a human just productive and more efficient.
What will that look like for me as the customer of a bank? What will it look like for the end user in terms of how they interact with their bank or their insurance company?
So in agentic AI, I see two scenarios. And maybe the most exciting scenario is that CCM tool, like the Bridge Communication Suite in the future, will be able to pull context, right? Pull and understand customer intent. And then based on the context and based on the understanding of the customer intent, it will be able to orchestrate a workflow and then communicate back to the customer. So we can pretty much go full 360, right? Using agentic AI, orchestrating an automated communication process.
So it becomes that two-way interactive conversation. We're moving away from a world where we're formatting everything as an A4 or a letter-sized document. We're moving into a world where all of a sudden it's not a PDF file necessarily sitting in an archive. It's a lot of data and information comes together that now serves as the conversation that we had about a particular topic.
Yeah, but it's really interesting because when you think about it, in present day CCM, we oftentimes talk about communication as a linear process, right? And pretty much a one-way street. And I think agentic AI will change this paradigm dramatically, and it will become much more about the customer interaction, right? So CCM, customer communications management, will evolve into customer interaction management, which is going to be not a linear stream anymore. It's much more like a conveyor belt of bits and pieces of information and communication coming together from various sources, various channels that in the end form the context based on which an AI will be able to make decisions, right? And I think that's an important point because without context, you're not going to be able to run an agentic workflow, right? So what you see in other industries right now. So when you look at what the large CRM ecosystems like Salesforce and others, they are investing heavily in a technology called MCP, Model Context Protocol, right? Which exposes basically a standard way of interfacing with a CRM system to pull data into the context of an agentic AI system, right? Companies like SAP are working or already providing MCP servers for their platforms. You have this with, service desk solutions like ServiceNow. Everybody's investing into these technologies, and for us in the CCM world, right? And this is a tremendous opportunity to tap into these sources of context, right? So when you think about it, you send me an email, or you send us an email, and based on the sender email address, we will be able to tap into our CRM system and obtain the necessary information to provide a good answer to your inquiry, right? So let's say if this was let's say a billing dispute, right? You don't want to pay the invoice, and we send you an email, why didn't you pay the invoice? It's overdue and so on. You get back to us and say, I've never received the services, right? Or the quality of the service was bad and I don't want to pay, right? And based on your email, we can, in the future, we will be able to tap not only into our CRM system, but also into our ticketing system, into our ERP system. We will be able to validate and confirm whether we delivered the services and so on. And that is the kind of context where an agentic AI based CCM system can then say, okay, let's see what kind of text blocks I have available that have been reviewed by the legal department and so on and so forth to compose a proper answer. The agents will then also be able to validate whether this is a message that can be sent out or whether this message needs to be reviewed by a human because maybe the amount of the invoice in question is so significant. So then Agentic AI will be able to take a conscious decision whether that is a reason to pull in the human back into the loop. And then we generate a task for a human agent who can review the text before it goes out or modify it. So that's kind of like the longer term perspective. This kind of human oversight is absolutely key.
You hear a lot about agents controlling other agents, and in the world that you described, the policy of truth or whatever, however you want to describe it, ultimately is still going to be a human, right? It's still going to be a human that steps in and says yes or no, but we're going to have to make sure those agents know when to ask the question.
Exactly. I think the fine line will be to avoid having to put the human into the loop as much as possible. So the agents have to be controlling themselves, and it's absolutely possible, right? So you can have multiple agents with different profiles, with different skills, with different, let's say, personalities, and they can monitor each other, right? And they can detect anomalies. They can certainly act on certain metrics like value thresholds and so on. And then based on those factors, decide, okay, now I need to put a costly human back into the loop.